And a very good evening to you out of Guyana. Welcome to Politics 101, or midweek edition. Today, of course, is Wednesday, December 28th, the week after Christmas. It was a long weekend, the usual Saturday and Sunday, and then we had Boxing Day falling on a Monday, and so there was the holiday for Christmas on the Monday, and then holiday for Boxing Day on Tuesday. So we're coming out of a long weekend in Guyana. I know in other parts of the world it's somewhat different, but it's this week in between Christmas and New Year's. It's always a truncated week. And those of you who are taking time out to join us after being away for a week, thank you very much and welcome to Politics 101. Please do the honors. And tonight we'll be talking oil because Dr. Vincent Adams is expected to join us to talk about the lies that the PPP has been spreading about the oil industry. We, on this program, don't deal too much with the oil issue, not because we feel it's not interesting. It's not interesting, but of course, because we don't share the narrative. There is the overwhelming narrative that Guyana has signed a bad deal and that Exxon is ripping us off, both of which are true. But we prefer to spend our time and energies more on saying, look, despite the bad deal, despite the fact that Exxon is taking advantage of us, there is still enough resources coming in from oil for Guyanese to live better than they are. We're not saying that one narrative or the other. Both narratives are important. But for us, the primary narrative is that if we're getting $1 more than we were expected to get, we want to see that dollar being shared equitably. And so we prefer to spend our energy saying, look, yes, Exxon is ripping us off. Yes, we signed the bad contract. Yes, we should get more than we're getting. But yes, we are still getting more than we would have gotten before oil. The rise in the oil prices because of the Ukraine war has brought a windfall, has brought a windfall to our country, and we are saying that that windfall is more than we had before and should be treated equitably. So that's where we put our energies on this program. But Dr. Vincent Adams, who is an expert on the oil industry, is going to be here to talk us through what the PPP has been hiding from us. Because you remember the PPP said, when it was in opposition, that it would renegotiate the contract when it came to office. It has not done so. It has not done so. And therefore, we're asking why it has not done so. Why it has not done so. Why it has not done so. They're up to tricks. There are many things that they said that they would have overturned when they got into the office, and they haven't done so, which meant that they're acknowledging that the previous government was on the right track. But they're not going to say that. In fact, they're lying about a lot of what has been taking place in the oil industry since the took over. Welcome to Politics 101. Dr. Vincent Adams is going to be here, and he's going to walk us through. Welcome to Politics 101. I trust that everyone has had a Merry Christmas despite the challenges. The weather in New York State, a lot of our people are there. The weather in the United States, period. Here's hoping that a lot of our people are safe. All of our people are safe. We know there have been some fatalities because of that weather. Our prayers go out to the relatives, the families of those who have been hurt as a result of that storm in New York. And in fact, it's a stretch all the way from Canada, coming right down to the Mexican border. Here in Guyana, we have had the constant rain, lots of rain, I think, on Boxing Day, Monday, Sunday going into Monday, and some communities have been damaged. Good Intent on the West Bank, a place that I've done a lot of work. They suffered some serious damages to building and so forth. Thank God nobody got killed. But the weather here in Guyana continues to be our typical December weather, and we are hoping that we would not suffer much more because of the weather. Those who've been doubting the whole notion of global warming, I don't know what you call this if it's not global warming. Welcome to Politics 101. Season's greetings. We are past Christmas. Those of you who celebrated Kwanzaa, good evening, and happy Kwanzaa, because as you know, Kwanzaa stretches for 7 days, the 7 principles, starting on Boxing Day. And I know Agda celebrated it here in Guyana, and I didn't get to turn up. I went out of town and couldn't get back in time for that celebration, but I've heard from people who were there that it was worthwhile. So welcome down to Politics 1. We are waiting Dr. Adams. We're waiting Dr. Adams. I don't know, he may be having some technical challenges. You know, sometimes the technology doesn't go right and people get stuck there. So we're hoping that Dr. Adams is going to get through. Is going to get through eventually to us, and we are assembling. We want to, of course, have an audience for Dr. Adams when he comes on. And welcome to Politics 101. I trust everyone had a nice Christmas in Guyana. As they say, you know, the money has not been flowing. People try to make do. Many people I've talked to, they try to make the best of a bad situation. Made the best of a bad situation. But you can tell that the funds did not flow this Christmas as people expecting that they would. Welcome to Politics 101. We are expecting Dr. Vincent Adams to come on and to talk to us about the oil tonight.
You know, people ask me all the time, why do you do this? Why do you not retire and read books and write fancy academic papers? And I say, yes, that is also important. But what is more important is that I was given an opportunity to read books in the first place, to engage with ideas because of the sacrifices of ordinary people. And so part of scholarship must be given back to the people in the form of public engagement. I see myself as a public scholar, what we call an activist scholar or a scholar activist, who's always trying to use the knowledge that is gained from reading books, from observing people in their communities, in their society, and giving them back, in the words of a UC Kwayana, giving them back to the people as a political nourishment and by extension, cultural nourishment. That's what I'm about. It's about being that public scholar whose work is not just confined to the classroom, but that classroom is extended to the public space. I'm David Hyde.
Mr. Watts, he's armed himself shots. Shots, watch it, tear gas. Live rounds. Also, I can see that.
Just for Quendon! The man is a boxer, man. I like your hand put in the boxer, man, to do that.
But since my cousin there, you know you come up the East Coast.
You listen to me.
Right? You know you come up to the East Coast.
You listen to me now.
You gotta listen to me too, man.
I am listening to you.
Right? Now, I see you on the East Coast. The day when they get a protest of them, the next day, that's when you see one bigger heads come up to talk to my family. Right? And that's bad. If we didn't do a protest, then we want to see nobody for justice. You see? I'm not holding back nothing. I'm not holding back nothing. I just need justice for my family.
I get visitors all of a sudden. All of a sudden, you all get visitors.
This is Joker. Who is that Joker? That piece of plum. They know who to deal with, you know.
Welcome back to Politics 101. Just taking you down memory lane. It's been quite a year. It's 2022. It's over. Do you realize that it was a year ago on this day, not the date. The date is tomorrow, the 29th of December, when the PPP muscled the Natural Resource Fund law through Parliament some of you were there in front of the Parliament, the National Assembly. Some of the members of Parliament who protested inside of Parliament have been suspended. Some of them are still suspended. They have not been paid and so forth. It was on the 29th of December that happened. So we started the year on that bad note. And we are now ending the year on perhaps a worse note. We saw what happened with the vendors just before Christmas. We saw the charging of the mayor of Georgetown and Sherrod Brown, our brother Sherrod, our brother Hubert Narain. So the government started the year assaulting the people of Guyana, and they've ended the year in the same way. They started the year in passing a natural resource fund law that gave and gives ultimate power to the president and the government. That's how we started 2022. And we're ending the year with them using that power that they took at the end of last year to spend the money that is coming through, like we say in the old days, a drunken sailor. Spending the money not on policies to empower the people, not on policies that are aimed at ending poverty, not on policies that are aimed on closing the gap between the different ethnic groups as far as wealth is concerned. Oh no. Oh no. Spending the money, as the opposition argued a year ago, spending the money on their friends and on their petty promises to their friends, not spending the money equitably, whether it's between and among the various social classes, or between and among the various ethnic groups, or spending the money on women who have to go out at nights and leave their children and do yard work and other forms of night labor. Nothing has been done for those women. So we have a gender problem, we have a class problem, and we have a race problem. The PPP has been found wanting on all three fronts. This year has been a bad year. It has taken us to a dangerous place. This year we saw the gunning down of young Quindon Bacchus from Golden Grove. Good night. Hail up to the people of Golden Grove who stood up erect for weeks, drawing the nation's attention to what was visited upon them. In between, we saw, as we just did in that video, a president going into one community, a community of one ethnic group, a community of his supporters, and answering their call instantly, compensating vendors for produce that were damaged when the police deliberately stopped a march at Monrepo, a march that was heading its way westward, had passed several Indian villages, did not touch a single Indian, And all of a sudden, the police stopped the march in front of a market where Indian people were plying their goods. And we know what happened. We know that goons who were not part of the march pounced on those people and did what they did. We would learn later on it was a plot to make the marchers look bad. But the president descended on Monrepo, and the compensation was swift. And then the police were sent to Golden Grove. And the next night, those people were shot. Their stalls were damaged. The president has not gone to Golden Grove yet to compensate them. Different treatment, different treatment. And as we say, towards the end of the year, another set of vendors plying their trade just like the people at Monrepo. And I pass Monrepo all the time. I pass through that market all the time. They are encumbering the streets. I know that. We know that. But yet, the president's government were to pounce down on vendors of another community, another skin color, charging that they're encumbering the road, charging that they're potentially responsible for people dying at the hospital. You know, we hear of mothers giving birth and dying at the hospital. Are the vendors responsible for that? Are the vendors responsible for the many deaths of women going to our national hospital to give birth? But those vendors were moved by force. And today, I read in the newspapers where the Attorney General is threatening to take away control of the streets of Georgetown from the municipal government, from the city government. The Attorney General says correctly that when the municipal government does not have the capacity to carry out its function, it could call on the central government. But this is a case of the central government threatening the city government that it would use a loophole in the law to take over control of the streets of Georgetown. Yes, the law says that if you are selling in front, you're vending in front of somebody's private property, that person could write or go to court and ask the city government or whatever local government to remove the vendors from their property. Yes, these people are vending in front of public property, the hospital, their property. That property does not belong to Nandalal or Robeson Ben or any one of them. The public hospital is what it is. It's a public hospital. Those vendors are part owners of that hospital. They are vending in front of their own property. But the government is threatening to take control of the streets of Georgetown. Why? There are murders that are happening on the streets of Georgetown every day. And some of those murders have gone unsolved. We don't hear the central government saying there are too many murders, too many homicides on the streets of Georgetown and we'll take it over. They want to take over the streets of Georgetown to prevent poor, mostly black people from making a living. What a country we live in. This is how we are ending 2022. The government is not taking over the streets of Georgetown to get the big businessmen to pay their taxes. Big business people, a lot of them owe a lot of taxes to city government. The government is not taking over the city to manage those businessmen. But it is threatening to take over the streets of Georgetown to prevent poor black people from making a living. Sisters and brothers, it is the season of peace, the birth of our Christ, who came to show us another way. But Christ himself took a stand against injustice. And so those of you who may be saying that it's Christmas time, let's not talk politics. I want to remind that Christ, Jesus Christ, whose birth we are recognizing at this time, stood strongly against injustice. May I repeat, there are powers that are given to governments. And though the Constitution may be silent, those powers, many of them, are meant to be last resort. Oh, there is the letter of the law, but there's the spirit of the law. Those who wrote those laws and enshrined them in our statutes and our Constitution, I am sure they did not write those laws to oppress us. But the PPP is intent on manipulating the law to oppress the ordinary people, to oppress the peoples of this country, to oppress mostly those it figure did not vote for them. This is the dark time, my love. I go back to Martin Carter. This is the dark time, my love. It is a season of oppression, dark metal and tears. Everywhere the faces of men are strained and anxious. I see it. I have seen it for the few weeks that I've been here. Everywhere the faces of men are strained and anxious. And even those who may have voted for this government, they may be hiding the strain. But there are some things you cannot hide. Everywhere the faces of men are strained and anxious. Who comes walking in the dark nighttime? It's at 2 o'clock in the morning. They went and brought down those people's stall. Who comes walking in the dark nighttime? whose boot of steel tramps down the slender grass, is the man of death, the strange invader, watching you sleep and aiming at your dream. Oh, we have men of death roaming the halls of power in this country, aiming at us while we're alive, and even as we sleep at night. They put on their uniforms of brutality and send them to aim at our dream. "2023 must be the year of the turn. It must be the year of the turn. It must be the year that our voices must sound so loud that it would shake the mountains." Dr. Martin Luther King, in his last speech the night before he was murdered, he said, "I'm not fearing anyone now. I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I'm sure you, my people, will get there." We are optimists. We have always been optimists. We had to be optimists. To negotiate and overcome slavery, and then indentureship, and then colonialism, we have to be optimists. I notice my guest is here with us. And like I said, we also are concerned about oil and what's happening. Our emphasis here is different, because we are talking about what the government is doing to make the bad agreement that was signed. The PPP has made it worse by their actions. And I want to say to my brothers and sisters who are advocating and raising their voices for a renewal of the contract, they must raise their voices on the lies, on how worse the PPP has made things. And they must raise their voices against what the PPP is doing from the little that we have got. The little that we are getting is a lot for us. Raise your voices not only against the renewal of the contract, raise your voices against the way the PPP is managing the oil industry. Raise it against the way they are distributing the resources that's coming. That's what Politics 101 is for. Dr. Adams.
Hi, David. How are you doing? Hey, sorry.
I am surviving by God's grace, as we say in the village. And you know, whether you're a believer or not a believer, you believe in God. That's one thing you can tell human beings. We can call ourselves atheists and agnostic and all kind of story. But
Absolutely.
at the end of the day, we cannot escape God. So I'm surviving by the grace of God. How was your holidays been?
Oh, it was great. You know, we had a little bit of cold spell, but I'm farther down south, so it was cold. You know, with a little bit of snow. So you know, I had my kids and grandkids around me. So you know, we had fun indoors. So it was really really nice. You know, and of course, I wish I was in a warmer climate down in back home in GT, but or Linden. But you know, it worked out really well.
Well, in the age of the internet and globalization, you don't have to be physically in a place.
That's true.
Langston Hughes has this poem. He says, Africa is on my mind. So Guyana, I know it's on your mind because I've been reading.
Absolutely, 24/7.
There you go.
I even dream about it. Believe it or not, you know, I go to bed. I mean, I really lose sleep about it sometimes. You know, it's not good. You know, we have
So,
we have such a great opportunity to, and I've always said, even before we even discover oil, we've got so much natural resources and climate and everything else, no disasters. We've got food, we've got water, that most countries in the world, the richest countries in the world who are in the desert, they envy us. So here comes this oil bonanza, and with a population of a very small population. And I always said that we should be the richest country on the planet, and oil was a gift to us for us to do that. But but we are not. First of all, the rule of law. You cannot have a country. I don't care what else you do. I don't care how much money you have. If you're not following the rule of law, you do not have a country. And that's one of my biggest issues. That we are allowing Exxon um, to just thumb their noses at our law. At the same time, and you touched on some of those. We've got a penchant for going around and just locking up people, at our whims and fancies. We locking up MPs, we locking up the poor people who are trying to make a living on the street with their stalls. But then Exxon, the big powerful Exxon, we are somehow afraid to even touch them, and they're violating, David. I've been shouting from the mountaintops. They are blatantly violating the laws of the land. We are operating those ships offshore. The permit itself says and the permit is the law of the land. The permit says that thou shalt have parent company guarantee and insurance for any size spill. Those are the words. I wrote it in the permits myself. And you know what was interesting there? It's acknowledged by even the vice president himself, when he was on the Glenn Lyle show. And Glenn asked him about full coverage. Chief, how about full coverage? Say, yes, we have it. And somebody probably gave him a clue that this question might be asked. And the honorable vice president pulled out his phone and read the clause that I'm talking about. I almost fell out of my chair. However, the law says you have to have a parent company guarantee and an insurance. Now, they claim that they've got a $600 million insurance, but there's no parent company guarantee. There is none. So it's against the law. Now, what a parent company guarantee is, it's, first of all, it's not costing them any money. All it is saying, Exxon, if something happens and it's above that $600 million, you will cover anything over and above that $600 million. And all you've got to do is sign a guarantee saying that you're going to do that. That's all you've got to do. Now, you tell me, David, or anybody with a little bit of common sense, why wouldn't Exxon want to sign that? The only reason that anybody can come up with, the conclusion that you have to arrive at, is that Exxon is saying that, hell, if this cost is too big, I ain't going to want any part of it. I can pack up and leave. That's the only reason, because it's not costing them anything. So that is the issue. But we are allowing them to operate, and nobody has any problems with them operating. Environmental management comprised of basically, three parts. First of all, put whatever is in place to protect you. And the first thing you do what is called an environmental impact assessment, David. And what that is the Bible of the dangers or the hazards that exist in that operation. Okay? It's sacred. And whatever that says, you do not interfere with it unless you go through a process to change. You know what they've done? The environmental assessment says you cannot operate the Liza 1 above 120,000 barrels per day. You know what they did as soon as I left? They up it now to 150,000 barrels per day. You remember what I told you? That number is sacred. And those are the exact words, the safe operating limit. Like in the United States, you do not even come close to the safe operating limit for fear of doing something and go. As a matter of fact, in the EIA itself, and even in the in the EIA itself, it says that the operating limit will be 100,000 barrels per day, which means you put a margin of safety there. So so that's the first thing. So they're increasing the risk of something bad happening by pushing the safety limit. But then on the backside, in addition to increasing the safety limit and putting us at more risk, there's nothing to cover us if something happens out, except for us. That's $600 million, because they're not following the law to sign that parent company guarantee. And here's the other thing in terms of history. When I was there, I told them they will not start operating Liza 2 and the Payaro without that parent company guarantee. And up to August of 2020, when I was there, I told them that I'm not signing off in the Payaro until we get that guarantee. Well, of course, I was removed right there and then in August. They threw that parent company guarantee that we were negotiating, and we were close for them to sign it because they didn't want me to hold up their permit. They threw that aside and immediately went ahead and signed off on the Payaro and allowed them to start operating. Not only did they do that and got rid of me, they got rid of the EPA attorney that was negotiating that document. So here again, I want to know, David, I want to know, the government seems to be, and the police and everybody seems to be anxious to lock up everybody, the normal citizens. Why aren't they locking up Mr. Rutledge and his other Exxon cohorts for violating the law? By the way, that is worse than any MP going out and sitting down or under a truck, or vendors who are trying to make a living, because that would impact the entire nation. It could stop all operations if you have some kind of a spill. It could wash away the entire Caribbean. If we have a spill like the one we had that in BP, it would wash away the entire Caribbean, which means the economy and everything would be gone. Our country would be bankrupt. So that's only one of the issues where they're not following the law, but that's a big one, and that's an easy one. Why isn't Exxon signing a parent company guarantee that does not cost them a dime?
And let me extend that question, Dr. Adams. Why does the government of Guyana, you see, Exxon is a big company. Exxon budget is bigger than Guyana budget. They're in international relations. We know that when it comes to bargaining, yes, companies like Exxon have tremendous power. But our government, after 4 years, 3 years of pumping the oil, after the rise in the oil prices, are you saying that the government of Guyana has not gotten some leverage to be able to say to Exxon, you know, 4 years ago we got a bad contract. We didn't have some leverage, but we got some leverage now. You're gonna do this insurance thing. Why is our government not insisting on using some cumulative leverage that it would have had in the last 3 or 4 years?
Hey, David, trust me, we have all the leverage and power. When I was there, David, before they were doing everything. I told them, you see the same, this insurance and the parent company guarantee that I'm telling you about. When I told them, well, because when I arrived there, the first project was already signed off. So when I looked at it, I said, wait a minute, how could we have signed off for, to allow them to operate without any liability coverage? So Exxon tell me, well, Chief, it's in the agreement that says we could be self-insured. Well, guess who signs the permit? It's not Exxon. It's Exxon Exploration Guyana Limited, a limited liability company that was specifically set up to manage this, and they had no assets. Their assets were going to be derived from producing oil, and they hadn't produced a barrel of oil. So I asked them, I said, well, okay, if something happens, Where is your assets? And I've dealt with these limited liability companies in the US when I worked for the US government. So I know all the tricks. So I said, I want the parent company, because that's what they do. They set up these limited liability companies to insulate themselves from liability. By definition, that's what the limited liability company does. So they said, well, I said, absolutely not. I said, I want total coverage. They said, well, we're going to go get insurance. I said, I really don't, whether you get insurance or not, it has to cover everything. And they went and they got insurance. But I said, no, that's not even close enough. You know how much I said, do you know how much the BP spill in the Gulf cost? At the time was 70 billion. Now it's gone up to 145 billion. I said, so when you go and get this a few $1 million in insurance or $2 billion, what is that going to do to cover a spill such as like $70 billion or 140? Who's going to pay it? The government of Guyana would be gone bankrupt. Don't mention the rest of the Caribbean, because our entire budget, the government of Guyana was only $2 billion. So where are we going to find the money to cover a spill? And they threatened to bring in their president to see Mr. Granger. I said, you could bring God. You see that permit on my desk? It's not costing me a dime. It's your incentive. The next thing I know, the next day they called and we went. They had the language. I revised the language. We put the language in there. But so it's not a case where we do not have the leverage. I shut them down when they were flaring. But the thing is, you see, because I know that, you see, in the US, for example, where I manage these companies, the Exxons of the world, when we said to jump, they say how high. But in Guyana, it's the total reverse, David. That is the problem. In Guyana, it's the total reverse. You ask them how come they were doing everything that, and it's much more than that. That was in agreement, and I said, no, I don't care what's in agreement. This is what you will do. They did it. So there's not a case where the government can't do it. The same, if you recall, the current government, the Honorable Vice President himself and His Excellency, the President, before they got into government, guess what they were saying? They were bashing the coalition, saying that you sold out our patrimony. As soon as we get in there, we will renegotiate that contract. That's on tape. So I guess they were trying to deny it. It's on tape. It's on video. And so I was happy. I said, well, okay, at least when they get in there, it's going to be a big, Texan is going to be in, they're going to have to comply. And the next thing I knew, nothing of the sort. They're in buddies with Exxon. Exxon, to be honest, you're talking about what the leverage the government has. Exxon is running the Environmental Protection Agency. Do you know what's going on in the Environmental Protection Agency? Exxon is even getting special treatment. Exxon files alone, it's separate from all the Guyanese businesses filed. It's separated. It's kept, the files safe, the two safe is kept in the executive director's office under lock and key. Whereas everybody else's files are kept in the file room where it's supposed to be. So what do you have to hide? Why is Exxon filing? But it's just the timidness that you see. So it's not a case, David, where we do not have leverage. But the question should be asked, what is the government? Why is it so spineless? Or why is it so cowardly? What are they afraid of? Especially since they were talking about, a lot of big talk when they come in, what they're going to do. That is the question should be asked. Why are they afraid of Exxon? Exxon cannot do that I know for sure in the US. They cannot even think about it, much less even mention it. And that is the way that they operated with me when I was there.
Dr. Vincent Adams asking the question, why are they afraid? Why are they afraid? They're afraid because the people who are benefiting from the situation are the people who have to finance them into power, and they are prepared now to put Guyana at risk so that those people can make some money. That's why they're afraid. It's a deliberate fear that they've imposed on themselves. Doc, look, all right, so they said the initial contract was bad. They say there are things in the agreement that they can't do. Now we have some new oil blocks, and they say it's going to be a new story. It's not going to be the old story. Is that true?
David, that's it's the most laughable thing that I've ever heard, and it it has one objective without any question. One objective, David, and you know what it is again? Well, I should say two. One is again to protect Exxon, no question. So that's one. The second thing is it's to divert. It's to divert from the conversation and to distract from the conversation, the hammering that they were taking over the old contract. So this here is to distract from that to talk about this new contract. But David, in reality, it doesn't mean anything. Is all you're doing is protecting Exxon. So here's the deal. Here's the deal in real terms. We've already discovered 11 billion barrels. That's Exxon take. So Exxon has already gone with the hog of the discovery. You know, nobody knows. You know, I remember the United States Geological Surveys had some numbers such as we might get about 15 billion barrels or so. So, and Exxon, here's the other thing. Exxon knows what's in that entire basin and where it is. What is going to be interesting, which is what I've said and I'm waiting for, to see if Exxon is going to be bidding on any of these new blocks. Because Exxon, if nobody else knows, they know where that all is. So this here is a distraction. Why did they back off? And I hope that people like yourself and the media do not let them get away with this, okay? We've got to keep talking about renegotiating that contract that they were the chief cook and bottle washer who criticized that contract. And matter of fact, David, for full disclosure, I was the first one who started criticizing. Even so, this has nothing to do with politics. I tell people this all the time. I was the biggest critic of the coalition government about that contract, and you can go check since it started with an article that with an exclusive interview that I had with the Stabrook News on February the 4th. It was a front page news article that said renegotiate and take a signing bonus of $1 billion. You could go. It started since February of 2018 when it wasn't popular. So I was the first person, and I continued even when I was working for the government. So this has nothing to do with my politics. Okay, so I want to know why, with all of the big talk that they had, why are they now trying to get out of this buying and talk about this new stuff that doesn't mean anything? And here's the third thing. A lot of local people would like to get on board now, which means that those people they cannot afford. So Exxon, the big rich behemoth Exxon, who could afford to get on board and spend billions and make hundreds of billions, so they've gotten all the hog. So these new investors now, a lot of Guyanese are interested. I got calls from Guyanese who are interested. So now they have got to pay a big price. So you've priced our local Guyanese businessmen, even in the diaspora who wants to get involved, you've priced them out of the market. Even though there's a little bit that is left, maybe, you've priced them out to the market. So that's what this is all about. It's a big gimmick. So I'm preaching with you guys. You cannot allow them to get away with this hoax. It's the distract from the real issue, which is renegotiate the contract. And here's another thing, Dave. There is a clause which I've continued to mention in the contract that says a renegotiation of the contract is allowed as long as both parties agree. But the problem is We have our government doesn't even have the nerve to ask Exxon for renegotiation. Never even approach them. So what why are we afraid of them? Exxon doesn't own that oil. They don't own it, but they're behaving as if they own the government. That is the problem. That is that is a major concern, not only to me, it should be a major concern to every single Guyanese.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vincent Adams, there walking us through the developments in the oil industry. As I said earlier in the program, we started 2022 with the passage of that controversial Natural Resource Fund, and we're ending 2022 with some of the very questions that were raised then, some of the fears that were expressed at that time when that law was passed. Dr. Adams, are we reaping what the opposition and other independent observers warned with the passage of that Natural Resource Fund 1 year to tomorrow, from tomorrow?
No. If you ask me, you don't even know that there's an NRF in place. Is it functioning to start with? Because first of all, it's totally controlled, and it was never intended to be controlled totally by the government. You recall, David, they had struck a deal where, well, of course, in the past administration, they had, I think, 18 or 22 members that represented the entire broad cross section of the community, from the little kid. I mean, every single organization, civic and otherwise, had a representative. They squashed that. That's okay. They decided they were going to have, I don't know how many are there right now, 5 or 7, whatever it is. There was an arrangement with the opposition that the opposition would be allowed to have, 2 or 3 on the committee. It so happened that I was the first name that the opposition put up, and not because of my politics, by the way. It's because of my expertise in the field, in both petroleum and environmental. So here it is. What's the first thing they said? Well, I don't have a finance background. Well, here I was working at the highest level of the U.S. government, managing hundreds of billions of dollars in budget, and then I went to MIT Business School, and Sloan Business. So when that was put to them now, guess what they said? Well, he doesn't have a law background. In the meantime, none of their nominations had any law background. So the coalition said, well, how about Christopher Ram? He's a lawyer. They said, no, they come up with something. Well, of course, we did. So the opposition has nobody in there. So it's one side. And then all you hear is they've made several drawdowns, by the way. I think they're up to now 1.2. They've drawn down almost everything, if not everything. So your question, David, I don't even know if it has any relevance, because it's non-existent. Right. It's non-existent. So in terms of its performance, I don't know how you how you multiply 0 by anything to come up with a number. But that's where we are. But David, here's another thing, David. I want to get into this. I'm telling you, when I saw what they were doing with these billboards that they're setting up all over the country, that's an affront. That's an affront to all. That's a propaganda. Those billboards are all about propaganda. And guess what it's saying? That we're getting 52%. It's a blatant misrepresentation. They're saying we're getting 52% of the profit. Folks, believe me, we are getting 14.5%. They're getting 85.5%, which means that they're getting 6 times what we're getting. But they're putting up this thing here. They're playing shenanigans with math. They're playing I like to call hula hoop type of mathematics with us, because it says yes, we're gonna get 50% of the profit, except that the profit is 25%, and 50% to 25% is 12.5% plus 2% royalty. We're getting 14.5%. So they're misrepresenting what's there. So the other thing, David, about that billboard, they don't tell folks that we may never get to the point where we would ever get anything over the 14.5%. Now here's why. Here's another thing that, and I'm gonna try to make this as simple as possible that people need to know, because I don't think it's plain enough. This 75%. You remember what I said? They're saying it costs 75% up for operating, right? So they pull out for every 100 barrels, they pull out 7. So that 25% that is left, that's what's split. But David, we do not know how much it's actually costing us. Do you know if it's costing us really 90% or 95% or even 100% cost? But here is the trick, David. They're putting the 75% only for accounting purposes. Okay? So let's say it costs 90%. That 15%, that extra 15% over the 75% goes over into the next month. And it goes over and over, and every month it adds up. David, I'm sure you've got credit cards. So look at your credit card. Every month, your credit card bill comes in and says, just pay me $25 for my credit card. But every month you're shopping $100, $200. So guess what is going on? That extra money is going into that account, so you're never gonna pay it off. So that is the trick. And on top, so you're paying interest on that amount. The other thing is the ring fencing. They have gotten an open checkbook to spend money as they please without the government input. So they can go and spend money on anything, the pipeline and everything else. Everything is gonna. So let's say, for example, you're producing Lisa 1 and 2, and they decide to go explore all over the country. But all of these wells, and one well alone is probably costing about 100 million US. So if they drill 100 wells or more than 100 wells, and those wells come in dry, that cost is going against the ones that are producing. In no kind of project management do you find. So that's the ring fencing. So it's not ring fence. So when you add the extra over the 75% that goes over every month, and then when you add no ring fencing with the additional cost that comes in, and then when you add the interest to all of the loans that are being taken place, you would never be able to pay down that debt. And the thing is, you see this audit that we're talking about, we have no capability of auditing anything. So whatever Exxon tells us, that's what we've got to accept. And trust me, they have got a reputation all over the world of taking advantage of these countries. Here's what I want them to put on the billboard. If they're going to put stuff in the billboard, first of all, they need to tell the people the truth that it's 14.5%, and they're getting 6 times what we're getting. They need to put on that billboard, David, that tell people about all of the lawsuits, and this is well-published data, that are pending and they've lost, which alleges fraud. And those are the words, those are not my words. Those are what's reported. Alleging fraud, consistently alleging fraud by Exxon. And guess what the fraud about? Not reporting accurately or reporting fraudulent information to the home government. That's what in Nigeria, in the US, they lost a big case in the US, as I remember. So let them put that on the billboard. Let them put on the billboard that they're putting this country at risk by exceeding the safe operating limit, which increasing the risk of a spill. And on the backside, they do not comply with the law that says you have to have parent company guarantee. Here is a company. Let them put on the billboard also that how grateful they are to Guyana, to bringing them out of financial ruins. This was a company who was dropped from the Dow Jones Industrial Average of the top 30 companies in the US. They were dropped. It's Guyana oil that rescued them. And now there's so much awash in money because of Guyana oil that they've even went back and even splurging on buyback of $50 billion in stocks and then paying out their shareholders $30 billion. While we have, on the other hand, there, David, we have our school children fainting in school from hunger. You know that I'm not making that up. Let them put on those billboards how they're flaring indiscriminately, and not only flaring, but they're hiding the flaring data. I want to know, David, why are they hiding the flaring? If you go to the government website, because apparently Exxon reports all of their production data, and then it was one hoopla after another because they were under pressure. They're not disclosing all the production information. So the minister one day got up and said, "Oh no, we've got the information now on the website." When you go on the website, David, they put how much oil they're producing and all this stuff. No data on how much they're flaring since July of this year. Since July, what the heck are they hiding? And remember now, they're making money from flaring. I've always said that. This stupid or silly fee that the EPA is charging is just nonsense, because here they are. That fee adds up to, when I run my calculations, to about $12 or $15,000 per day. You know how much money they're making if they do not if they have to cut back if they do not flare? $500,000. So they're making $500,000 a day, paying $15,000 a day. Now you tell me, wouldn't you take that any day of the week or any second of the day? So let them talk about the oil workers that are being treated as second and third class citizens on those ships when they've got to wait for left after everybody finish eating. And that didn't come from me. That's coming from GAU, where they don't get to leave. They're treating the insurance companies in Guyana. There was a big headline that says that the insurance companies, I can't remember the words that they use, but they're only fronting for Exxon, and they're not happy because the measly fees that they're being paid, it's not sufficient. So let them put those type of things on the billboards, rather than trying to fulfill the local folks, and taking advantage of the fact that there's very limited knowledge of the people of Guyana. So that's what they're doing. They've got a bad reputation, David. There's no question. I'm not making this up. We were even afraid to even impose a windfall profit tax on them with all the money that they're making and they're splurging on, whereas other countries are Germany, Britain. And now in today's, I saw an article today where they filed a lawsuit against the European Union for imposing a windfall profit tax. It's greed, David. It's greed. They want to make all the money, but nobody else will make it. That's what it's about.
Dr. Vincent Adams there, giving us the statistics and giving us the story behind the billboards. Dr. Adams, thank you very much for coming on. We missed a little bit of time because of some technical difficulties, but I think we caught up because we've gone 15 minutes over our time. We'll have to get you back as quickly as possible. So, absolutely, because there were a couple of things that I wanted us to touch on that we did not get to touch on. But thank you very much. And here is wishing you and your family and your inner circle a happy new year. In the traditional sense, in the larger economic and political sense, we can only hope that the new year brings better news from the oil front.
Thanks, David. And And same to you and all of the listeners. Wishing you folks all the best. I still had a great Christmas. We had our pepper pot and garlic lamb, and we bake our bread. So I still enjoyed my Guyana Christmas in a way, but it could never be like home. So I envy you folks in that respect, but I wish every one of you really good health and happiness for 2023 and beyond. And hopefully, I'll be down there to enjoy beautiful Guyana.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vincent Adams, giving us all the information we need. But the most important actor for us, Guyanese, here is the government. Exxon, they say you catch Paku, you bossy back, and you pack salt inside. And that is exactly what is happening. The government of Guyana is the Paku here. And our entry point as Guyanese is the government of Guyana. And we're going to use the information we get from people like Dr. Adams in order to show that our government is incompetent, it is dishonest, it is anti-national, and it is prepared to allow a foreign company to do what it likes, so long as its little friends are making money. So it's not just the incompetence, it's the dishonesty and the political dangerousness of a government which promised to do better, but it's doing worse than the government that was there before. Good night. I'll see you all tomorrow night for our last program of the year. We're going to be taking a look at what transpired in 2022. And as I said earlier in the program, 2023 has to be the year of the turn. The year of the turn. We cannot continue like this. 2023 has to be the year when we turn all of this around.